Hello and welcome back for another Giant Slayer TFT Top 10 video. Today's video will be a countdown of the top champions for ranked play in patch 12.1. The meta is in a great spot for 12.1 because we have a wide variety of viable carries, supports, and frontliners. There's a ton of possibility, but which champions are the best? We're answering that question as we make our way down the top 10 champions list. Let's go ahead and dive on in. But before we begin, please don't forget to click the links in our description. Give your support to everyone who helped make this video happen. We host many TFT tournaments with plenty of exciting content to come. Be sure to also follow our Giant Slayer TFT social media pages. Alright, let's get back to the video. Starting off our top 10, we have Caitlyn coming in at number 10. Set 6 has had quite a few one-cost champions that are worthy of the top 10. Ezreal early game with Scrap Innovator, Twisted Fate to hold on to AP items, or Camille when Camille was ridiculously overpowered. But the nerf dust has settled, and sitting atop the one-cost mountain is Caitlyn? That's right, Caitlyn. Caitlyn earns her spot in the top 10 because few other early game champions can almost always guaranteed kill at least one champion per round. There's a lot of factors that go into it, but a Caitlyn 2 with no items is usually going to kill most other low-cost units with her ability. Plus, she aims at the furthest champion, which is usually a squishy backliner. Being able to secure at least one kill a round is huge whether you're trying to win or lose the round. Either way, one less enemy champion will save you health, and saving health is what the early game is all about. Not many other champions can do that early into the game with no items. Lurking in the shadows is an issue that plagues Caitlyn this patch, a threat that looms over her. That is, the Hextech Augment Tower that sits on either side of the board. That's right, this uninteractable object on the board is able to block Caitlyn's ability and negate it entirely. Yes, you can position around it, but why is that even possible in the first place? It's a silly issue to bring up, but we've had this happen at least once when using Caitlyn, and the fact that it's a real problem is abhorrent. Let's move on to the next champion who comes in at number 9, Echo. The boy savior himself steps into the top 10 as one of the best 3-cost utility champions. Echo's utility brings a lot to the table throughout the whole game. Applying a slow to enemies and an attack speed buff to his allies in an AoE is extremely useful, though the damage it does is definitely on the low end. Thankfully, Morellonomicon can fix the lack of damage problem. Damage aside, slowing the attack speed of enemies is always a useful debuff to have. That said, it can be difficult to always hit the target you want with Echo's ability since it's aimed at the largest concentration of units on the board. Similarly, the attack speed buff to allies often only matters to melee champions since ranged carries are rarely within the area it's applied in. With Scrap as an early game trait and Assassin for later, Echo is a 3-cost champion worth investing in if you're unsure what exactly you want to play and are looking for a well-rounded champion to stabilize your board with. On to the number 8 champion, Yone. Most of the meta carries will be ranking a bit higher on the list than usual. Honestly, a lot of them are interchangeable. Part of that is due to items easily transferring between them, but also the nature of the meta revolving around flexible play. Sometimes you're looking for a Yone but hit Urgot instead, or high roll an early Kaisa. There's no major difference in value between the different carries, as it all depends on items, your board, and the state of the current lobby. Back to talking about the boy wonder Yone. Yone is still relevant despite a health nerf and Guardian Angel being nerfed as well. Turns out scaling with attack speed is all you really need to do well, and Yone does that just fine. Academy does add some value, but Challenger is all you really need for Yone to pop off. Well, and utility traits plus items, of course. Item-wise, the tried and true offensive items for AD are still the best, such as Last Whisper, Runin's, Infinity Edge, and even Deathblade. Guardian Angel is also still fine to use, though Quicksilver is fast becoming the more common item. Overall, not much is new with Yone, so if you were comfortable using him prior to 12.1, he's basically the same in this patch. Next up is another 3-cost champion that comes in at number 7, Shaco. Syndicate gained a lot of rep in this patch thanks to the buff to 7 Syndicate. If you're able to find an emblem or augment and reach that tier, the chances of winning go up dramatically. While Akali 2 is definitely more desirable as a late game carry, Shaco is usually going to be the go-to carry. The best part about Shaco is, being a 3-cost unit, players can stabilize their board in the mid-game by hitting Shaco 2 with a few items. This opens the door to being able to pivot out if you want to later on, or continue down the Shaco path to 3-star him. Basically, what we're saying is that Shaco is flexible. That flexibility is aided by Shaco also utilizing generic AD items like Last Whisper, Infinity Edge, and Runes, meaning you can stabilize in the mid-game with Shaco, hit level 8, and either pivot into a different AD carry or stick with Syndicate Assassin. Winning games with Shaco can be difficult, particularly since you need to 3-star him, but if the goal is to have a consistent mid-game that transitions well into a top 4, Shaco is a great champion to do that with. Let's keep the carry train going with the number 6 champion, Jhin. We considered rating Jhin lower on the list because of how strong the board of Jhin Sniper is. That's too narrow of a criteria to use because, as we've said multiple times, flexible AD boards are the way to currently go. Putting Jhin in his own bubble is disingenuous to the idea that no specific carry is necessarily doing better than any of the others. That said, a Jhin board is one of the stronger compositions in the game because it utilizes a ton of CC, strong frontliners, and a consistent backline damage dealer with Jhin. Take away any of those, and Jhin is going to do much less comparatively to, say, Yone or Urgot. Luckily, the items are once again transferable, so if your Jhin board isn't working out and you have the gold to pivot, you can easily do so. In general, we're going to rate Jhin slightly higher because of the champions played with Jhin, such as Orianna, Braum, Yuumi, and Scion. Other boards can also use those champions, but the best board for Jhin uses those champions to great effect and naturally inflates the worth of Jhin in the meta. Okay, that sounded a bit harsh towards Jhin. We love him, we swear. Our point is mostly to caution getting hung up on one specific carry when all of them can do well. Our final carry in the top 10 is Kaisa, who comes in at number 5. Kaisa is slightly apart from the other carries simply because her late game cap is at the highest. Even a 3-star 4-cost unit can lose to a decked out Kaisa 2 in the fight if it goes long enough for Kaisa to cast multiple times. Funnily enough, they nerfed Kaisa in 12.1. May not seem that way since she's still plenty strong, but it basically means you need to get a bit lucky if you're looking to pivot into a Kaisa board. Level 1 Kaisa will struggle, and as such, it's usually better to focus on other carries the majority of the time than it is to hard all in on Kaisa. But when you do hit Kaisa 2 with items to give her, oh yes, she will win you rounds. Maybe not the whole game, but definitely enough rounds to at least top 4 with. Due to how strong Kaisa 2 is and the fact that her late game is the strongest, we give her the crown for the 12.1 carries. With that, we can move into our top 4, which consists entirely of frontline and utility-focused champions. Up first, we have Scion coming in at number 4. Oh yes, Scion. Scion is adored by the community because his targeting AI is by far the best of any champion throughout all of TFT. Sure, it can be frustrating to have half your board stunned multiple times, and in the past, carry Scion was a bit broken. But can we just take a moment to appreciate how well this unit functions, especially when compared to the number of champions that straight up miss their abilities or have them fizzle out? Gushing aside, Scion is one of the best frontliners in the current meta. Crowd control doesn't affect him, and his defenses are naturally higher thanks to Colossus. That makes him the perfect champion to splash in when you need more frontline, though taking up 2 spaces is definitely a downside. On top of that, there are niche Imperial builds depending on augments, as well as scenarios where you can run Scion as a bodyguard next to Braum. The bottom line is, without a good frontline, a lot of compositions struggle to do well. Scion solves that issue quite handedly. The other strongest frontliner coming in at number 3 is, of course, Braum. While Scion has questionable synergies, Braum has 2 really good synergies. Bodyguard has free defensive stats for your frontline and is far easier to splash in than Colossus. Syndicate is one of the better traits in the patch, and Braum enables the heck out of that composition. Besides 2 stellar traits, Braum also has similar CC to Scion. If we're comparing just these 2 champions together, Braum should win out most of the time due to costing 1 less space on the board than Scion while bringing similar stats and utility. Hence, why we have him 1 spot higher on the list. At the end of the day, the real answer to the question of which frontliner is better has nothing to do with either Braum nor Scion. Instead, it's all about what your current board state is and which of the 2 you manage to find in your shop. Hit Braum 2? Play him. Found Scion 2 but already had a Braum 1? Either play both or toss out the Braum. It doesn't make a huge difference besides specific compositions like Syndicate. The point is, take whichever you can, because they both fulfill the frontline quota. Next up, we actually have 3 champions coming in at number 2. Those 3 champions are the joy of the meta: Janna, Orianna, and Yuumi. Honestly, this spot could have easily just gone to Orianna, but it felt like a disservice not to mention both Janna and Yuumi. It's rare to see one of these champions played without at least one or the other, so we're lumping them into one joyous package deal. Janna brings a ton of healing to any composition with some utility, as her ability pushes nearby enemies away. Keep in mind that her healing is to the whole team, it's only the knockback that has a range. Orianna, do we need to talk about what makes Orianna so good? Fantastic splash traits, decent ability damage, CC, and shielding. What else could you possibly want from an AP 4-cost champion? And of course, the final piece of the joy puzzle, Yuumi. Yuumi is possibly the second best 5-cost champion simply because he's so easy to toss in onto any board and have an immediate impact. Great synergies and an AoE stun, she's one cool kitty. If we have to pick just one of these champions of the three, then yes, it's Orianna for sure, but all of them are strong in the current meta. And finally, our number one champion, Kench. That's right, the Kench is no longer a bench warmer. This demon catfish monstrosity is a monster of the meta because no other champion can snowball a board more so than Kench can. If the player high rolls him on level 7, well, you're basically guaranteeing that that player ends up at least in the top 4, if not higher. Kench can frontline, has high health, gains scaling stats if you feed him champions, takes a champion out of the fight briefly by eating them, and farms you golden components. That's so much provided by just one champion. Bottom line is, if you can fit Kench onto your board as soon as possible, do so. That's it for our top 10 champions for patch 12.1, but before we go, we have one honorable mention to talk about. The honorable mention is a bit special because it's not just one champion, it's all of the various Arcanist carry champions that are viable in the current meta. Because there's so many, we weren't able to narrow it down to just one in our top 10. Those champions are Lux, Malzahar, Swain, and Victor. Each of them has various strengths and weaknesses, but depending on your items, augments, and board, each of them is capable of being a carry. Lux is the most common in the mid to late game, Victor can carry the ultra late game, Swain is for niche builds like Imperial, and Malzahar can flex between several compositions. We recommend all of them if you're looking to play Arcanist, though the easiest is likely going to be Lux. Alright folks, that's all we have for you today. This list is only a small look into the meta, so while we recommend all of these champions, keep in mind, there's plenty of other strong units in the meta. That's the beauty of the current patch, so many things are viable. Let us know in the comment section below what your top 10 champions are for patch 12.1. Thank you for watching. If you're enjoying our content, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe for future Giant Slayer TFT videos.